It's the end of the year, so you know what that means. List time. Now that everybody's making their lists and talking about their lists, I figured I'd give you my personal list of 2014's top moments in gaming, as well as discuss the year, and in a recap sort of way. 2014 wasn't the best year in gaming. It doesn't take a lot of intelligence to tell you that. What 2014 was to me was mostly a lot of disappointing sequels and failures on behalf of proven developers. Even the likes of Microsoft or Sony couldn't develop working products. You have the likes of the Master Chief Collection, Drive Club, Little Big Planet, Assassin's Creed Unity, and many more completely not working at launch. In many ways, this is completely unacceptable, especially in the Master Chief Collection. When you have a product made by Microsoft and funded by Microsoft, a flagship product such as Halo that they're working so hard to turn into TV shows, movies, books, and more, you think they would take the time and give whoever they needed to give the money to the extra time and money to make this work properly. Yet the Master Chief Collection has taken over a month to get working properly and still isn't as of this recording. That being said, at least when Master Chief Collection works, it is a very good game. The same cannot be said for Sony's flagships exclusives, Little Big Planet and Drive Club. Both of these titles are broken, and even when they work, aren't that good, in my opinion. Little Big Planet 3 is what it is when it works. If you like Little Big Planet, you can play Little Big Planet 3. In my estimation, it is not as good as Little Big Planet PS Vita, but it is a fine Little Big Planet game. Drive Club, on the other hand, is the best racing game on the PS4, which unfortunately for racing fans that own a PlayStation 4 is not saying much. When the Xbox One has Forza 5 and Forza Horizon 2, and the best you can come up with is Need for Speed Rivals and Drive Club, you're not really doing what you need to do. The Forza series of games, both normal Forza Motor Racing and Forza Horizon, are fantastic games, very divergent in their qualities. You have Forza Motorsport being a true competitor and honestly outdoing Gran Turismo in many ways. It has the hardcore sim capabilities of what Gran Turismo is beloved for, and has a great assist system that you can add or lower your assist to make it more simulation style, less arcade style, and by doing such, you raise the amount of experience and credits you earn. That being said, you have Drive Club, who is a social game who doesn't work, or hasn't worked most of the time, and when it does work, you have no customization options for your car outside of a paint job. It's very limited in scope what you can do as far as tuning, as in you can't have a personal tuning of your car. And if that's going to be the case, you need to make an arcade racer Burnout style. And somehow Sony managed to skate the line right in between simulation and arcade, leaving in a game that satisfies neither audience. Hopefully, this very sad state of affairs for Sony first-party exclusives is seen as a harbinger of good things to come. Because if you have two first-party studios releasing these two games, and you have another two that have announced The Order 1886 and Bloodborne for first quarter in 2015, as well as Uncharted coming at the end of the year, that leaves just short of 24 Sony-owned developers with unannounced PlayStation 4 products waiting in the wings that will hopefully make next year a much better year. Additionally, you have what is known to be an open world RPG coming from Guerrilla Games' second team. Hopefully this will be much better than Killzone Shadowfall, but I'm excited to have a Sony exclusive open world RPG that hopefully heavily borrows from the Elder Scrolls series. There has been a narrative this year about all these broken games we've seen as a new trend, a very ugly future for gaming. If we're going to talk about new trends, we should be talking about early access and if that's a good or bad thing for the industry. The truth is, broken games shipping en masse is nothing new. I remember growing up and having my PlayStation 2, buying a Tomb Raider game, and it not working. In conversations with some veteran critics in the industry, I've began to learn more about that product, and it turns out that Sony pushed that through certification with it not working properly because of what that product and what that name meant to Sony that year. They forced the developer to go back and fix what was broken in subsequent issues of the disc, leaving that first thousands of discs out there that people would buy for the same amount of money completely broken and without the ability to patch them. In many ways, this new reality of all these broken games coming out in a patchable era is a lot better than that. Arguably, the broken games now are in larger numbers, and the only thing I can say to that is when you have public companies who are making billions of dollars off of the gaming industry, this is going to happen. The only thing you can do is punish them for that happening. The gaming community as a whole needs to. The only way to do that is to identify whatever critics or outlets that are out there that are reviewing games that you truly enjoy, that you love their content and you see that your tastes line up with particular critics or outlets. For me, that's GiantBomb.com. I love their work and I tend to agree with most of their marks. That being said, I have not pre-ordered a game in a long time. Last pre-order I put down was for the Diablo 3 expansion, Reaper of Souls, because I'm at a point with Blizzard where whatever they do, I pretty much know I'm going to like what they do, regardless. With all that being said, I'd like to move past the recap portion of this video and get into the awards section, starting off with the Action Game of the Year. Just so you know, the awards that I will be talking about are Action Game of the Year, Shooter of the Year, Fighting Game of the Year, Horror Game of the Year, Racing Game of the Year, Add-on of the Year, and then I will do platform awards that will be given to console exclusive titles, basically meaning that the game that wins the PS4, Xbox One, and Wii U categories must have a console exclusivity, at least at launch and at the time of recording, to that platform. i.e., Sunset Overdrive has the capability of winning Xbox One Game of the Year, Call of Duty does not. Now that that's out of the way, let's get into the awards. First up is Action Game of the Year, and in a surprising turn of events, this award actually goes to a licensed game, which has never really happened for me, but this year Shadow of Mordor takes this award for its attention to detail and developer Monolith's guts to avoid chasing the Lord of the Rings movie bait that so many games cannot. Even when fan-favorite characters from the literature and film adaptation appear, they serve a purpose outside of pure fan service, reminding the fans that, remember him? You loved him in the movies. But they take the time to work them in a cohesive narrative surrounded by compelling systems, the first of which is the minute-to-minute action. It's very similar to Rocksteady's Arkham combat style, first shown in Arkham Asylum, but I would say it's slightly more refined because you mix the counter, stun, and attack moves that are mapped to the face buttons with certain spectral abilities from Talion's Wraith form the main character, Talion, that really give you an extra set of abilities just to speed things up, either in movement, combat, allowing you to attack particular enemies that you need to daze first, certain things like that to spice up the combat and keep that combat puzzle ever evolving. Now, if you played any of the Arkham games, you know that this formula of X, Y, A, B for all these attack, daze, and counter abilities is rather a simple concept on paper. And it is at first. You can get away with, in the first part of these games, just mashing these buttons and you'll be okay. You won't get massive combos. It won't be the most interesting you can do, but it's okay. And that's true with Mordor. The difference is when you add in these enemies who need to be dazed first and all these things, at a certain point you create sort of a combat puzzle where you see the different challenges you have in front of us, like this enemy has 2 blades, you need to daze them first, and you start figuring out what abilities you need to use and when you need to use them. And when that starts happening, the combat not only feels fluid and strong like it does in all the Arkham games, but it feels dynamic, rapidly evolving, and a super organic experience that doesn't feel pre-scripted, but rather feels like these enemies might actually be thinking for themselves and maybe even evolving throughout the battle. That idea of evolution is really the cornerstone of what Mordor sits on. Talion is in an undead form. He serves as a wraith. Therefore, when you die in combat in Mordor, that's not a game over reload sort of state within the game. That's just another piece of what the game is all about. When you die, the enemy that killed you gets promoted within the orc's army. What that means is you, by picking out particular orcs to chase down and kill, or dying from particular ones, maybe even intentionally, can sculpt the political realities, as well as inserting an ally into that system and defeating everyone in his way so that you can ascend him up the ranks to the right hand of the commander. And when that ally is the bodyguard, things get a hell of a lot more easy when you're trying to take down that boss in the end game. This system, paired with excellent combat, a truly realized, morbidly dark Mordor, which had never been done before, and excellent voice acting by Troy Baker, make Shadow of Mordor my personal action game of the year. As far as my shooter of the year, this undoubtedly has to go to Wolfenstein: The New Order. I picked Wolfenstein: The New Order over more multiplayer-centric games such as Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, which was an incredible product and handily finished ahead of the Master Chief Collection, which would have been closer in contention, made this a much more difficult award to decide if it worked properly. But Wolfenstein: The New Order is a solely single-player experience, which takes a lot of guts at this point in time. id Software gave their product to an unproven team in Machine Games, and without fail, Machine Games delivered an astounding performance. They gave the Wolfenstein series heart, character, story context, and true emotion. The first hour of the game are a traditional World War II Nazi killing scenario. And after that, you wake up in the 1960s in a world where the Nazis won World War II, and you have to go find the resistance and take down the Third Reich for good. As usual, Wolfenstein teeters between historical fiction and science fiction. In the occult personalities that were in history embodied by Adolf Hitler and Himmler. These are kind of used against the Third Reich, and you're able to play with history, and the narrative that this spins is astounding. The upgrade system that you use is very ingenious. Instead of accruing experience for killing people and picking a certain perk on a skill tree. You use certain weapons to do certain things which unlock new abilities that really give you a sense of power. By doing this, you're taught to experiment, and for me personally, that went from trying to find an assault rifle because, hey, that's what I would do in the original Wolfenstein, Wolfenstein 3D rather, and it became, oh, these silenced pistols are really cool, and I began playing Wolfenstein as a stealth game, and that was one of the funnest experiences of the year, because it took a rather interesting approach to that stealth. It was very competent in what it did, but when you failed at trying to sneak around enemies, you're BJ Blazkowicz. You can kill everybody, and it's a hell of a lot of fun. You know, when you take out two shotguns that are shooting shrapnel rounds in a submarine, that's kind of badass. And I will never forget how much just pure dumb joy that gave me in between these cinematics of tremendous human emotion being exchanged between two characters in a hellish scenario. There are truly impactful scenes that I will not soon forget. Seeing Nazis execute the mentally ill hit a little close to home for me, and as if you needed more reason to hate the Nazis, they managed to do it. They gave you a true context-driven sense of emotion like, alright, I need to kill this bastard. And they continue ramping up the emotion and emotional connection you feel with these fictional characters until the end, where it ends with a spectacular boss fight I don't want to ruin for anybody. Just please play Wolfenstein The New Order, because it's one of the best shooter campaigns that is, in the last 5 years. I enjoyed the story and the single-player nature of it just as much as I did BioShock when it first came out. Moving on to my fighting game of the year. This was I guess you could say, a really disappointing category. I mean, this year I only had like 3 real contestants, and 2 of them are barely allowed in this year. Like, I had Killer Instinct Season 2, which is weird because it's just another set of DLC for an existing game, and Injustice, the PS4 version, which came out last year. So I guess by default, Guilty Gear Xrd Sign wins. But that is not to say that Guilty Gear Xrd Sign is not a fabulous fighting game, which it is. If you enjoy highly technical anime-style fighting games, this is a Guilty Gear that's tremendous. It has all the technical prowess that you expect from these deep and complicated fighting games, as well as it has an art style that's catchy, and given its place as one of the only 2 PlayStation 4 fighting games that nearly 20 million gamers have to play with, if you're a fighting fan who is looking for online fighting, the netcode in this is pretty good. And to be honest, there's an install base, so you'll always find a match because you don't have a whole lot of choice. I am not an expert at fighting games by any stretch of the imagination. I can't analyze fighting games as well as anyone else. All I know is A, I'm excited for Street Fighter V and Tekken 7. And B, Guilty Gear Xrd Sign was pretty much the only eligible game in this category this year. So if I'd have to say anything to the gaming populace, get together and give us some more fighting games. It's kind of a sad state of affairs at this point in time. But for that reason and the overall quality that I can see in Guilty Gear Xrd Sign, I would give my fighting game of the year to Guilty Gear Xrd Sign, which has a god-awful name. Moving on to my horror game of the year category. I've always had a deep love for horror, whether in TV, movies, or video games. And for a while in the past generation, and even the first year of this generation, the horror genre was characterized by indie or smaller titles that could take chances and make non-combat driven horror games. But this year, My horror game of the year is a AAA experience for the first time in a long time. Probably since the first time since the original Dead Space. The Evil Within comes from a disturbed mind, a mind behind the greatest Resident Evil games, and it has a real strong sense of those old school Silent Hill games. It really harkens back to that PlayStation 2 era of big budget, horrifying, psychologically driven, heart racing action games that have a strong horror influence. This game, you have the ability to take down your enemies with firearms and such. You have to make tactical decisions in regards to your inventory, and you need to decide which bodies you're going to burn to guarantee that those enemies don't return. These sort of decisions you need to make in your capability as a fighter in this game, being so strong, is really an interesting mental trick the developer plays on you. By giving you enough tools to feel somewhat powerful at particular points within the game, the player needs to battle with themselves mentally, to not get horrified by whatever hideous monster you're seeing, but be able to keep in your mind that I'm not better than all of this stuff. I can't kill everything. I can't just stand here and shoot. You need to remember, regardless of how many enemies that kill you, the second you think that I have every chance in the world to kill this enemy and there's nothing they can do to stop me, that moment is the moment that you die. This game can be tough, it can be horrifying, but it's definitely one of those old school psychological horror games that you don't want to miss if you have been a fan of Resident Evil, maybe like 3 and 4, if you were a big fan of Silent Hill 2 and 3. What you have to remember is the mind that this came from made Resident Evil 4. This is very much the sequel to that game, and if you enjoyed that, this is a game that you can't let pass you by. There's not a lot that I can say to analyze or really sell you on this product because, as I see it, horror is the most personal experience you can have in any form of entertainment. What scares somebody might not scare the next person. Jump scares work on some people, and for other people you need deep-seated psychological tricks to truly scare you. Because after all, you're holding a controller, there's certain parts of your body that realize that this isn't real. And that's a very important thing to know. So I know that for me, this was the best horror experience I've had this year. A hell of a lot better than, say, Alien Isolation. But that's just my opinion. I'd encourage you to go check it out. I know it's on sale right now on the Xbox Marketplace. I think it's $30. Absolutely worth that. It's worth that at least 2 times over. I pray to God that there's some form of story DLC that comes out for this or a sequel soon. I want some more of whatever Shinji Mikami has for me. Moving on to the racing category. It wasn't until a few years ago that when I say Forza 3 or 4 came out that I became a racing fan. I'm not that amazing at racing games, but I find it relaxing and I love taking my car and sort of bending it to my will, making it look the way I want and perform the way I want, going into the tuning and making everything work just the way that I want. With that being said, there weren't a ton of horror games this year. I mean, racing games, sorry. You have Forza Horizon 2, I mentioned Drive Club, there was The Crew, and there was a re-release of Need for Speed Rivals with all the DLC. I think Need for Speed Rivals is a bad game. I think Drive Club is a bad game. I haven't played the final version of The Crew, but I played the beta, and I think that is a bad game. Much like the fighting category, Forza Horizon 2 wins pretty much by default, but much like Guilty Gear Xrd Sign within the fighting category, Forza Horizon 2 also deserves to win this based on its own merit. Forza Horizon 2 takes the in-depth approach of the Forza series in in its customization of your vehicles into an open world. Just like the original Forza Horizon, it takes place around a festival where you drive around on the open roads. You really get to explore your car in driving. What I mean by that is, just like in real life, if you take your car out on the open road and open that vehicle up and see what it can do, you get more attuned to your car. And when you get a new car in Forza Horizon 2 and you take it on that open road and see what that car can deliver you, you know its acceleration, you know its torque, you know its handling around particular types of corners, you know what it can do. After a while, you know what it can do, you know what you need to tune, and you get that car working just right, and you truly feel some sort of weird connection or connectivity between yourself and that car. You tie that together with a myriad of car choices from tons of different makers, and you feel that anything you want to do, any type of car you want to drive, you can. And that's a truly astounding achievement. So far this generation, Forza 5 and Forza Horizon 2 have both set the pace for what hopefully Gran Turismo 7 will live up to. I just pray to God that comes sometime soon, because we badly need a good racing game on the PlayStation platform. Moving on to my last genre-specific game, we'll call it. It's best add-on. In years past, this has been best DLC, as I've referred to it, but this year I'll call it add-on because it actually goes to an expansion. And when deciding it, I was deciding between two Blizzard expansions. You have Warlords of Draenor for World of Warcraft and Reaper of Souls for Diablo 3. And in a landslide, this goes to Reaper of Souls. Now, any of you who talk to me on a regular basis, say on Twitter, on PSN, Xbox Live, or in real life, know my feelings about Diablo 3. That's one of my favorite games in recent memory. I grew up with the Diablo series. Really formed my love of the lust for loot type game. The Diablo games, the Torchlight games, the Borderland games. I really love upgrading and gearing out characters in just a way to make yourself feel like a god when you're in that world. And nothing transformed an experience surrounding that like Reaper of Souls. What Reaper of Souls did for Diablo 3, in addition to adding more skills and 10 extra levels, in revamping the Paragon system, it created Nephilim rifts and bounties, where after you play through the campaign with one character, for all of your characters you unlock a mode in which there are 5 bounties in each Axe map, so there are 5 times 5. There are 25 bounties until you need to reload your game to get a new set of bounties. And by completing those, you get Nephilim rift keys, and with I believe it was update 2.1 on the PC. You need one Nephilim Rift key to open up a Nephilim Rift, which is basically you need to fill up this bar by killing enemies in these randomly generated levels. And by doing that, you bring forth a Guardian who you have to kill, and they drop loot. Now what this does, it has the ability to drop legendary gems and Greater Rift keys, which going into a Greater Rift, you have to do as quickly as possible, fill up that bar to get to the next rift, and do as many levels of a Greater Rift as possible before time runs out to be able to upgrade your legendary gem. Now this seems like a small thing, but this sort of loot lust and grinding to upgrade your character and abilities is taken to the next level by legendary gems that when you plug them into certain places have astounding properties. Like damage mitigation, actually adding additional damage to things like emitting, different damage types, healing, buffs, all sorts of things, wide variety of things you can do. In this adventure mode that all this is encompassed in is outstanding. The 5th act that is added in Diablo 3 by Reaper of Souls is also very well done. The story is what it is. It's pretty much my review of all story in a Diablo or a Borderlands game. It's not great. It serves its purpose to get you through what you need to get through to level up and get your gear. They do have some great environments. I especially love the urban environments within that game. It feels great. And I guess if we're talking about the end boss, spoilers, it's Mathiel, the Reaper of Souls. And I'd say he's a better final boss battle than Diablo was, but that's not saying much. I think both of those are kind of okay. But like I said, the real star of the show is Adventure Mode. The new class of the Crusader that was added was tremendous. I really enjoyed that. But Reaper of Souls, because of its polish and depth and just what a value it's turned out to be for me, because I know I paid $40 for probably 100+ hours of extra gameplay out of that expansion. So I don't think there's any arguing with Reaper of Souls. I mean, feel free to disagree. That is one of those truly subjective categories that no one can really say they have the definitive answer on. But now that we're done with the genre-specific awards, let's recap them quickly. We have Reaper of Souls for add-on. Racing Game of the Year is Forza Horizon 2. We have The Evil Within for the horror game. Guilty Gear Xrd Sign for Fighting Game of the Year. Shooting Game of the Year goes to Wolfenstein The New Order. And Action Game of the Year goes to Shadow of Mordor. Moving on to our platform-specific titles. We have for the PlayStation 4 Game of the Year, I will give to Transistor. Transistor is not exclusive to the PlayStation 4, but it's a platform exclusive. It's also on the PC. There's a follow-up to Bastion. Supergiant Games knows what they're doing. Greg Kasavin, former GameSpot guy, knows what he's doing. The gameplay feels great. It's sort of a combination between a middle ground between a real-time and a turn-based strategy game mixed with a little bit of MOBA gameplay in a single-player body. And the storytelling is truly original. Having a disembodied sword talk to you, and especially on the PlayStation 4, having it come out of this little speaker on this controller is an intimate experience. There are very few games that use that speaker for any real worth. I would say the best ones are Transistor. You have Mordor, who when you use your Wraith abilities, the sound that comes out of that Wraith ability comes through that speaker. And I think I like GTA's use of all cell phone noise coming out of that. It gives you the sort of distance that you'd want to feel between your cell phone and the outside world. It's a good approximation coming out of the controller, but Transistor, that talking that comes out of the controller is awesome, and I think they did a fantastic job. If nothing else, if you're not a big fan of the gameplay, which that is completely understandable. It's a very specific thing that it does, and if you're not a fan of strategy games or MOBAs or things of that nature, I could see that combat not jiving with you. But the music is outstanding. The art style is one of the best of the year, and the originality of its premise is off the charts. For all of that, I don't think anything can touch Transistor as my PlayStation 4 Game of the Year. Partially in due to the fact that if you make the list of PlayStation exclusives this year, not a particularly long list. So, once again, it's kind of by default because this year has been kind of soft, but Transistor is a fantastic game and couldn't be I mean, I think it's worth like 30, 40, $50. But I believe it's 15 bucks, and it's definitely worth picking up. You can finish it in, I don't know, 4 to 6 hours, and it makes that $15 price tag outstanding for what it is. And if you play through it and love it as much as I did, I believe the soundtrack is $10 on iTunes. Absolutely buy that. It's outstanding music, as was the previous game from Supergiant Games. Now that we're done with the PlayStation 4 Game of the Year, we'll move on to the other major next-gen platform, the Xbox One, and pretty much running uncontested is Sunset Overdrive. I don't say that because out of any real disrespect for the rest of the lineup on the Xbox One, because they have some great games, like as console exclusives. Master Chief Collection's awesome when it works. Titanfall was amazing. A little shallow, but amazing. The Forza games have been outstanding, but Sunset Overdrive, a true exclusive from Insomniac Games that gives the pace of shooting action that I haven't really seen since Quake 3. It's that quick, that fast, and after you get into it, that speed, your mind and your body attunes itself to that speed, and by the end game, you don't feel overwhelmed by that speed. You're moving so damn quick, and you're landing the shots that you want to hit, and it feels amazing. You unlock these power-ups that, like, you can tune them to your particular play style. If you like to get in there with your melee ability, you can shoot fireballs off whatever melee weapon you're using. The outfits that you can unlock are absolutely insane. Like, I was wearing a furry wolf head over my head, a sweater, and I believe a thong and cowboy boots. I looked insane, especially when I was throwing fireballs at an angry blimp. That really brings us to the core of what makes this game outstanding. Humor. Most of the time we get humor in games, it's bad. It's forced, it's contrived, it's immature. But this year we saw 2 games that were outstanding at humor. Sunset Overdrive and South Park: The Stick of Truth. What makes humor so difficult in games isn't that games have terrible writers or anything like that. It's solely that humor is a very particular thing that is personal, but more importantly, humor is something that needs brevity. It needs to be spontaneous. And when you put something through focus testing, months of bug testing, months of PR before a launch, and then finally comes out, there's nothing brief or spontaneous about any part of that game. It's taken years to make. Any true spontaneity or creativity has been drawn out over years, and it had to rely on charm and authenticity and being genuine. And Sunset Overdrive nails that. It's a true accomplishment. It's a fun game. If you've ever been playing something and just start shaking your head, just saying, "This is so dumb," but in the best way possible, that's what Sunset Overdrive is. It's true joy to play, and the last 5 years have been filled with so many brown and black colors in a game, really drab and self-serious things, which certainly have their place, as you can see, with the Bioshocks and The Last of Us, things of that nature. But sometimes you just need dumb joy. And Sunset Overdrive is the most joyous thing I've played in years. Colorful as hell. And that's why it's my Xbox One Game of the Year. Not only does it play amazingly and have a great story for what it is, that open world is truly realized, having truly interesting side missions everywhere with fantastic characters and terrific encounter designs. But when you're in that combat bowl, you can do whatever you want. You're in complete control of your character and your movement. And while you're doing that, you need to stop yourself from having terrible aiming and shooting because you're laughing your ass off, which becomes a little bit of a problem at some points, especially when they start tearing down the fourth wall with total aggression. my Wii U Game of the Year, which, hey, guess what? I actually have a Wii U. I felt like showing that because, like, one of the 10 that do. Uh, if you own a next-gen console, before you buy the other next-gen console, you should buy a Wii U because it quietly had the best year of any console. If you don't believe me, right now if you buy, I will actually pull up my Wii U library so I can just tell you how good it is. Alright, so right now I have Bayonetta 2, Mario Kart, Smash Bros., the NES Remix, Pikmin 3, Captain Toad's Treasure Tracker, Hyrule Warriors, Windwalker HD, and Wonderful 101. And I'm probably going to pick up Zombie U on a little bit of a discount soon. Those are all amazing games, but only one game can be this year's Game of the Year for the Wii U, and that goes to an eShop title. That goes to Nintendo console exclusive Shovel Knight. It's on the Wii U, 3DS, and PC. Apparently at some point next year it's going to be on PS4 and Vita, which Vita seems like a perfect home for it. Then this is another one of those indies that looks real retro-like. The difference is both in how it looks, sounds, and plays. This doesn't look like it's harkening back to the era of, say, Mega Man. When you play this game, if you were somehow to plug an NES controller into your Wii U and start playing it with that, and someone was to hide the Wii U somewhere, you would have no idea this isn't an actual NES cartridge you're playing. It fits right alongside Mega Man 2 and Mega Man 3, and there's not a bigger compliment I can give any game than that. Its controls are the tightest I've played in decades. Its art design within that pixel art is outstanding. The colors used are even outstanding. I mean, the attention to detail in this product is so deep that the colors they use could actually be rendered on an SNES. The music could be played on an SNES. Why they went through all that trouble when that would never be done, I don't know. But I appreciate it. And at the end of the day, games are about two things: how they look and how they play. Hence the name video game. If you were going to go for a pixel art style, truly go for it. And no one went for it harder and succeeded than Shovel Knight. That is the most pixel art, retro-inspired game I have ever seen, and they did it better than anyone ever could. And the gameplay, the controls are really tight. If you played, say, Super Meat Boy, and you felt those controls were awesome, this game will blow you away. I think the game's $15 through the eShop or through Steam. And in 2015, through PSN, whatever means you have to do to play this game, play it. It's not super long. There are really interesting mechanics, like there are these little stone statues at save points. It gives you a choice. If you need to save, just run up to it and you'll save. Or, if you feel confident that you can make it to the next save point, jump on it and break it. It will give you money to buy more things when you go back to town, but you didn't save. You can literally destroy the checkpoints for selfish reasons. And little touches like that, in combination with the tight combat, the funny writing, the excellent art style, and amazing sound design, make this game just completely unabated Game of the Year material on what I'd say is one of the top two toughest platforms 2014, right up there with the PC. Now, we've made it to the overall Game of the Year award, and just to recap, so far given awards have been Shadow of Mordor, Wolfenstein: The New Order, Guilty Gear Xrd, God, that name sucks. Ugh. The Evil Within, Forza Horizon 2, Diablo 3, Reaper of Souls, Transistor, Sunset Overdrive, and Shovel Knight. Those are the only games that I will consider eligible for my Game of the Year award, And I'm going to give it to a game that truly made me remember what it was about those original games I played that made me fall in love with video games so damn much. Back when I first played the PS1 at a babysitter's house when I was like 5, I think. I believe it was a Crash Bandicoot game. What really forever tied me to this medium was the pure unadulterated joy I had. After that first moment of realization that when I was holding that original DualShock, realizing that I'm controlling what's happening on screen. I'm not just watching this cartoon anymore. I'm controlling it. Past that moment of realization, it was the pure joy you get from these games, how happy it made me feel. And although I deeply love BioShock, BioShock Infinite, Fallout 3, Skyrim, The Last of Us, these self-serious games that are all about the narrative and the context, the art direction. Every now and then, I need a game to remind me about that joy I felt as a child. Every now and then, you need a game to just make you laugh, make you smile, make you enjoy playing it. And when you go to work, you go to school, you're not wanting to go home just so you can jump online and yell at some more people in the multiplayer chat of Battlefield or Call of Duty, which are both very good games. But you're wanting to go home without putting a headset in. Putting on your headphones to listen to the game audio, playing alone, really enjoying the hell out of yourself, and having an amazing single-player experience that reminds you why it is you care so much about gaming, why it is that you tweet about games, why you make and watch YouTube videos about games, why you go to different sites such as Game Informer, Giant Bomb, GameSpot, IGN, Polygon. Why it is that we have like, I don't know, like stacks of old games. Like why I just installed a 2 terabyte hard drive in my PS4. Why we love this medium so much. And that's what Sunset Overdrive did for me. It reminded me that deep, heartfelt narratives are important. But we shouldn't be trying to say, this is just like a movie, because games can be so much more than that. It can have that brilliant scripting and brilliant direction and design of films, but it can be more than that. Cliff Bleszinski said when he saw the Call of Duty trailers with Kevin Spacey, there are things like, the lines between film and games blended forever. That pissed him off, and it pisses me off too. Games are so damn special, and we should appreciate that. And Sunset Overdrive, makes no bones about it, it's a game. For instance, you're in an apocalypse that was caused by an energy drink. You look ridiculous while killing zombies that were created by this energy drink. When you shoot zombies in the head with a flaming vinyl record and their heads explode, cans of energy drink shoot out that you can buy new weapons with. That is just the dumbest damn thing I've ever played, and it was so enjoyable. For the amount of joy and laughter I had while playing this game, for how amazing the combat feels when you're flying around telephone wires around the city, when you're fighting 5-story tall monsters with a rocket launcher that shoots exploding teddy bears. The amazing sound design, great voice acting, great art direction, amazing combat design. Like when you are making a game so fast paced and it's open world, every inch of that world, as far as where you transport yourself and how you do so, has to be expertly tuned, and they did so amazingly. For all these reasons and more, Sunset Overdrive is my game of the year of 2014. Please tell me anything you disagreed with or agreed with in the comments below. You can tell me what categories, what games would win your categories, your platforms, and your overall game of the year. Feel free to leave any comments you want down below. Thank you for stopping by. 2014 was a hell of a year. Hopefully 2015 will be a little better, and hope you have a great holidays and a Merry Christmas.